starting. Welcome everybody to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. Well, we've got a full house here as we go through the excitement that was AEW Worlds End. For those of you that can't see us on YouTube, the ones that are watching on Spotify, I have three guests to introduce to you. My first one is someone that you know very well to the podcast. He was abducted by the Death Riders about 6 months ago, and he is now back on our show. It is Mr. Dave Robinson. Dave, Moxley has let you out the cell.
Yes, man. How you doing? It's good to be back.
It is good to be back. It feels like a lifetime since, well, actually, probably all in, just after all in, maybe around
Yeah,
that time.
it's been a few months, hasn't it? But yeah, really, really looking forward to get on and review the show with you guys today.
Indeed, mate. Always good to have you back. And then, of course, our US, I always call him the US correspondent of the show for us from the FTR Follow the Revolution Facebook page. It is the All Elite Beta Genius. It's Mr. Gary Joe. Welcome back, my friend.
Oh, absolutely, dude. I appreciate you having me back as always. It's been a couple weeks since we've done a live together, but um, when you pulled the surprise bringing Dave on here and our other guest for the first time, this is going to be a good fatal four-way of an episode, I feel.
Quite
Yeah, fa
fitting.
fatal four way where we're not against each other, up against a normal fatal four way when we'd all be against each other. But nevertheless, as Gary mentioned, we do have yet another guest on the show, and it's debut time. Another one from across the pond. Is Mongo from the Cruising with Kayfabe podcast. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on, Adam. Excited to be here. And I agree with Gary. I think it's going to be a great episode and four great minds discussing a great pay per view.
Indeed, what was a great pay-per-view. But before we get to the pay-per-view, there was obviously some news that come out about people backstage at the pay-per-view. I know, Gary Joe, I saw it on your Facebook page this morning and I started reading on it. Dave, I'm going to start with you on this. Baron Corbin and AJ Francis, the former top dollar, AJ Francis now in TNA, assuming he'll be a free agent soon, backstage at World's End. Any of those names, do those names particularly, Dave, surprise you? Do they fit, what would you say, the AEW mold?
Yeah, I saw that. I think AJ Francis's deal is up with TNA at the start of 2025. So he's somebody that come in. I think he's got like a long history with Swerve as well. So I could definitely see him coming in. I think he impressed a lot of people with his last run in TNA. Baron Corbin, I don't think he is eligible to compete anytime soon. I think he's got a month or so and he can't compete. So again, interesting. I would expect Baron Corbin to maybe kind of go out onto the indies and reinvent himself and perhaps long term, perhaps show up in AEW. But I think AJ Francis is somebody that they could incorporate into a story with Swerve pretty quickly, to be honest.
Interesting. Gary Joe, I mean, obviously, I'll say I saw it on your Facebook page this morning. I had to go and check it out myself. I mean, I've seen AJ Francis a lot. Obviously, big TNA following on this channel, obviously UK media for TNA, so we do get a lot of their roster on our show. It doesn't surprise me, AJ Francis, one bit from what I've seen of him. The fact what I've said is that AJ Francis, when you've put the guy on a TV program weekly. You give him, he doesn't really need a character, he's got his own character, but you give him weekly TV, you give him weekly slots on the TV to basically introduce himself to you. He build his character, cement what he does in the ring. It isn't a surprise to me that someone like AJ Francis is in AEW, but would it be one or two of those people that you would like to see in AEW as the months progress into 2025?
To tell you the truth, I don't think I want either of them signed with AEW. AJ Francis, he's okay. I mean, of course, he does have history with Swerve because they did create a group that people really, really loved.
Yep.
Um, but I'm just not the biggest fan of him. But I admire his work and his devotion in the ring. Baron Corbin, I mean, he's a stud, man. I mean, he's been in wrestling for a long time as well. Um, I do perhaps agree that he could potentially go to the indie scene. I mean, maybe he could be that surprise 23 for TNA here in the next couple weeks for them.
Mhm.
Um, but no, I'm just gonna respectfully pass on those two when it comes to potential signings, because one that I'm waiting for is like the one that Mongo and I talk about all the time. Like, I really am so excited for Speedball Mike Bailey more than anybody at the moment. So
Yeah, interesting, Mongo. Just now we're going to introduce you to the show. So A, welcome again, and B, yeah, I mean, Speedball Mike Bailey was the one that I was kind of expecting there. From your perspective, I mean, yeah, I kind of get where Gary Joe's coming from in here. I don't see, I mean, like I say, I'm a big fan of AJ Francis' work, watching him weekly on TNA. I don't see either of them fit in, I would say, what I would class as the AEW mold. Is that something you agree with?
Yeah, I would agree with you and Gary on that. Also, like David, I do enjoy watching AJ, and I was always a Corbin fan. I loved the Lone Wolf gimmick on NXT. I just think he kind of had a bad little run, but Bad Luck Corbin was fun. I just think they both fit the TNA mold better. Personally, I think that style fits them. Like AJ Francis, like you said, he's been killing it on TNA. That title match with Nemeth was fun. I mean, just from the moment he arrived at the beginning of the year, people thinking he was a joke, to him kind of going out and showing he could still wrestle, that he wasn't flop dollar like he was called all over online. I think they're probably visiting friends backstage. They're both obviously in the Tampa area from when they were with NXT, but I think they fit TNA better. I just think AEW kind of has that style, like you said, where they want those work rate persons, not the larger than life characters. I think they both could work, but they need people like the Speedball who are going to go out there and just have a match of the year night every night. That's kind of what their niche is.
Yeah, definitely so. And it won't be too long before we speak Speedball in AEW. I'm sure of that. It was a shame couldn't come on the C2 this year. But yeah, and by the way, just as a cheap plug, if you want to see an interview with Speedball, go check to our special interview section where you can see an interview with then TNA X Division champion Speedball Mike Bailey. I promise that's the only one I'll do on this show. I don't normally do the pre-show stuff, but I do have to say there was a very impressive debutant on the pre-show. Her name was Tony Storm, who debuted on the pre. No, in all seriousness, though, Gary Joe, before we start that, what I love about this, and I know she's going for, I don't know if it's an amnesia gimmick or whatever she's doing. Obviously, we've seen the timeless Tony Storm, but one thing that I do give AEW and Tony props for is she's come back in, and she's not come back in and gone straight back into the title picture where you would kind of expected her to do so. She has come back in, Gary Joe, and gone right to the, without being disrespectful to Lena Gray, she's gone right back to the bottom of the pile.
it is funny that you say that, because I was telling one of my good friends, Vicky, the other day, that this is one thing that I love about Tony Storm. It just feels that she appreciates AEW more, but more so Mariah May. It's not taking that, spotlight away from Mariah for going right to that title, because I think we were all expecting that as well. Like right when she returned, on Dynamite, and that was my first reaction too. Was like, okay, all right, the feud's going to start up again. Now that they're going to be coming to Australia here in February, so I'm going to call it next month, even though it's January. But it just, I don't know what it is. Tony Storm can just really, really dominate a character no matter what's in front of her. It's just astounding to me. Like, I don't think anybody wanted the timeless Tony Storm to end right off. So the fact that she's seeing a delusion, and it's really fitting two characters into one. And we thought maybe we're getting the three faces of Tony Storm. I mean, technically, are we? But I don't know. But she's pulling it off really, really well. So, and I do agree with you with Tony Khan. People like to bicker saying, "Oh, no, he can't create characters." Are you sure? Maybe it's a good teamwork with Tony, RJ City, and Tony Storm. But it is so, so fun to watch. And one last thing I want to say is the clip that I shared. It was 4 seconds. Hey, how nice. She thanked catering.
Definitely so.
That was just too funny.
Yeah, it was great to see Tony Storm back. But Mongo, with that, do you expect where obviously AEW go into Australia, hitting Grand Slam in February? Do you expect things people like Tony Storm, Buddy Matthews to become a bit more prevalent on AEW Dynamite, especially in the lead up to this? Because obviously they're going to promote that big. We've seen Buddy Matthews over in Australia doing some promotion. Do we expect to see Tony and Buddy front and center in the next few weeks on Dynamite?
Oh yeah, I definitely think there's a reason they're kind of, quick starting this. Her on Ring of Honor, her on the pre-show, Dynamite, kind of having that debut. Everyone kind of confused. Even the announcers playing into it last night, where their crowd was chanting, "She's a rookie," and Shivani's like, "I guess if you want to, support her delusions, go for it." Um, so I think it's. Yeah, I think that's their marketing. You're gonna have Fletcher, you're gonna have Jay White, all the people who are within that area and have their family, they're going to be front and center for sure. And I don't know if we're going to get that Mariah payoff yet, but we're definitely going to get some teases real soon. Just even when she mentions Mariah, it's like that movie Three Faces of Eve. She kind of like cringes, she almost breaks. It's a very good psychological aspect. I love that they're using real movies and subplots, and like Gary said, they can't create characters, but they're really good at finding characters apparently. So I'm enjoying this, and I definitely think Grand Slam is going to surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to that in February. Also, looking forward to Forbidden Door in August as well when it comes back over across the pond. Dave, look, Tony Storm, as we said, returned. Old gimmick. Was you expecting Timeless, or are you glad that we're seeing a kind of a third phase of Tony Storm?
Yeah, I expected it to come back as timeless, but I'm absolutely loving this and what they're doing. And I don't think this payoff is going to be at Grand Slam. I think it could all go all the way to All In. I think they're sowing the seeds of a story now that may culminate at that huge event later on in the summer, and it's in Arlington this year, I believe,
Yeah,
on in Texas. And I would fully expect Mariah May and Tony Storm to be a big match on that show. What they do in Australia, obviously, Tony's going to be a huge part of that show, hugely popular. But I'm really enjoying it. And Gary quite rightly mentioned RJ City. I'm sure he's playing a huge part in this story. And yeah, they're not just kind of winging it and making it up week by week. There is a long-term story at play here, and I'm really looking to see how it unfolds over the next year.
don't be silly, Dave. AEW don't do long-term booking. What are you talking about? Of course they don't. I mean, come on. Seriously.
Do you want to know a fun fact about Three Faces of Eve? The movie, the psychiatrist, his name is Luther, Dr. Luther. Just want to point that out and put that on the ether.
Not know that.
Brilliant.
See, facts all around from Mongo every time.
Facts, and more facts. Love that, by the way. And again, it's those little things, though, right, that they do get criticized for. But it's also those little things that a lot of people don't understand, right? Because I didn't know that. And now you say it, it makes perfect sense. Luther was Timeless Tony Storm's, manager or whatever you want to call it. So lots of things there that people probably don't understand. That perhaps do your homework before you start giving it the mouth. Anyway, at least anyway. I'm not going to talk too much more. It was an outrage that the Outrunners didn't win. By the way, I'm going to just throw that out there straight away. I'm not having that, right? No, you're not. But there was one other thing. Jeff Jarrett did defeat QT Marshall. I wasn't talking about the match though. Mongo, Jeff Jarrett come out backstage and said he's got an announcement on Dynamite regarding his future. Are we expecting Jeff Jarrett to announce retirement? What's going on there? Do you know?
So I was thinking about that, before we came on air this morning, because I kind of rewatched that backstage clip because everyone seemed to be in shock of it. And I'm wondering if he's going to announce that 2025 is his last year in the ring and he's going to end his career all in. I can see Tony giving him a send off like he's done his other legends, and I can see him kind of having that retirement tour up to All In and maybe having a match at All In and finishing it and calling it a career, like you said, because they want to make All In special every year. It's kind of their big show. So what better way than have the last outlaw get his last match at All In?
Yeah, definitely so. And Gary, Mongo just mentioned it perfectly there. What Tony Khan and AEW do for legends that are going out is make it special for them. We've seen, obviously, likes of Sting. I know Bryan Danielson hasn't finished yet in terms of his full, in ring fully, but obviously they made that last run very special for him. Do you see that being? Do you see that agreeing with that Jeff Jarrett is going to be announcing some form of retirement end or at least an end date on Dynamite?
I mean, I could expect something kind of like a movement towards the retirement. I don't necessarily think it's going to be an all in. If anything, I think they're going to save that for Dustin Rhodes, which would make sense in my opinion. I do like Mongo's point of view though, because right on the button, like he's done that really well with Sting, and that's one thing that I love what Tony does is he really takes good care of those legends, make sure they get their feel good moments as well. It's just one of those things that I always say we shall see, and I'm pretty curious to see what it's going to be. I mean, could we potentially see Jeff Jarrett as the Owen Hart winner this year? That's a possibility, but it depends if the stakes are the same. If it's got to be the same, I don't see Jeff Jarrett winning that, because of course it would be for a world title shot. So, but I don't know. But I do believe for sure it's going to be a retirement speech. Perhaps that.
Well, it gives us another reason if you haven't already got enough reasons already to watch Dynamite, especially as it's kind of a new era this Wednesday. We'll touch into that a bit more. Dave, with regards to Jeff Jarrett, I mean, you've done Global Force as well in the past, and I heard whispers around that was resurfacing or something was going on with it. I know obviously Scott D'Amore done Maple Leaf as well, but could it be that he's going back into that side of things?
I'm not so sure. I believe that Jeff will stay with AEW long term. I think this could be spelling the end of his in-ring career, whether that is like what the guys said, announcing that this is his last year as a in-ring performer. Um, I'm not 100% on that because we've got kind of the Bryan Danielson stuff. Even John Cena over in WWE, they've announced that this is his last year. So I don't know whether they would do something as on the nose as that. The question for me is if we were building towards Jeff Jarrett's last match, who would the fans, who would Jeff, who would that match be and where would it be? So that's kind of like similar to what Mongo said. I've just kind of been thinking this morning about who that would be. What would a Jeff Jarrett retirement match look like? There's a number of people you could look on from his past, some with AEW and some outside of the company. So, but I do believe that we're perhaps going to be seeing the end of Jeff Jarrett at some point in 2025 as a full-time in-ring performer.
That we will see. We'll do another show and we'll have a look at it. Once we know what the deal is with Jeff, we'll start to maybe plan our show where we can hazard a guess as to what, who, what, and when and why he would retire. We'll look at that. Just going to run through the pre-show results. Obviously, as we mentioned, the rookie Tony Storm beat Layla Gray in the first match. Jeff Jarrett did beat QT Marshall in the second one, and very much an eight-man tag. Leo Rush, Action Andretti, and the Murder Machines of Lance Archer and Brian Cage. Boy, do I love that tag team. But not as much as I love the Outrunners. They did beat the Outrunners and Top Flight, unfortunately, in an eight-man tag match. Now let's get on with the pay-per-view. Dave, we always say on this channel, you start the show off hot. I think the show's still on fire by this one. Will Ospreay, Carl Fletcher, and I know whatever you think of Dave Meltzer personally, but he has said the best opening contest to a pay-per-view in wrestling history. For once, Dave, I find it hard to disagree with Meltzer on that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a match straight away that I would think no, that absolutely would beat it. We've got a bit of recency bias at play here. But yeah, I thought it was an absolutely sensational match, a sensational way to open the card. Even just Osprey's entrance, got the crowd fully pumped up as it always does. In terms of the outcome of the match, I was perhaps expecting it to go this way, given the fact that Kyle had picked up the win at Full Gear. But yeah, sensational match. A lot of blood, not for everyone, but definitely for me. I thought it added. Like my only concern with the amount of blood was how much more we were going to be seeing throughout the show. But yeah, in terms of in isolation, just looking at this match, I thought it was perfectly done, and it really did play into the story of Will's progression in the tournament and obviously going up in the final later on in the night.
Yeah, I mean, it was brilliant. Mongo, look, I don't know what word you can use to have this match. The match was just absolutely unbelievable. But even in defeat, Carl Fletcher Mongo looked absolutely strong as hell, ready for a big push in 2025.
Absolutely. I love the heel heat he was getting, going up, gyrating to the crowd, doing the suck it taunt. I popped really hard when he ripped that little kid's sign, and then the kid had another sign ready to go that said, Ospreay's still better. And I liked the storytelling of this match, that he beat the living hell out of Ospreay, and he basically, Ospreay knew him well enough to get the victory, but it cost him his stamina. Like, David said, he was bleeding buckets of blood, and it was everything you could want from their second match, and it leads up to that rubber match at Dynamite Grand Slam. I think that's where the rubber match makes sense to be in Australia. Have the rubber match, have something, because people are going to want to see the third match, and it was perfectly placed on the card. I had a feeling that one or Okada was going to open the show, and like you said, it's hard to agree with Dave, but I got to agree with him there. That was definitely one of the best opening matches I've seen in quite some time.
And just to point out, that was hard to not agree with Dave Meltzer, not Dave Robinson, who's in
Oh,
the
no,
top.
I'll agree with Dave Robinson over Dave Meltzer any day of the week. All right.
Gary, Joe, look, this is a testament now, and we've said this so many times when we've had our discussions about the AEW roster, but this just goes to prove it. And honestly, you're talking to someone that's a WWE fan, I've always have been and always will be. Nothing, and not that I won't slate AEW. You know that I'm fair with critiques, and if I have a critique, I will say it, and we'll talk about that later. But I look at this roster, and even up against a WWE roster, I would say that pound for pound, AEW's roster is superior in terms of wrestling ability and what you'll get match by match. You wouldn't get a WWE card that has the wrestling brilliance that this card had right here. But it just goes to show you, Gary Joe, how strength in depth the AEW roster actually is.
This is why I praise the roster, much as I can, because they do have some of the amazing pieces that any wrestling company would want. Why do you think WWE went after, Penta and, I almost said EC3, Ethan Page, Jade Cargill, it's just they see potential in those people, like a lot of companies should, like I texted Mongo last night with Will Ospreay, Will is AEW. It just, this guy, this is why sometimes when they say, well, Will Ospreay shouldn't be losing this many matches. He only lost, 5 matches, 6, including last night, since he's been signed. Since Revolution, rather. So he's going to be fine either way. But I very much agree with your statement there, Adam. Just this roster is just phenomenal. Like deep down, like maybe I'm a biased warrior, but you know what? It's just this roster just, man, it just makes me love the wrestlers, and they always tell a story. That's what that match did last night with Kyle Fletcher and Will. Like I posted last night, Will is literally bleeding for blood, sweat, and tears just to get into, that championship round. And, there's just so much fight into Will. And this is not all about Ospreay either. Like Kyle, he was he gained the most points ever in the C2 so far in their history. So Kyle's going to have a really good year. I really believe that in 2025. If anything, I could see him potentially become a maybe breakout star of the year. But as for the match, yeah, I really, really loved it. Like I craved more when the match ended. I'm like, no, I want more. Just something about these two are just so damn good, and that's what happens when you have that chemistry when you're a trio anyway. So I don't think this feud is over either. Just like what we said about Australia, with Grand Slam here coming up, I could see the trilogy go forward.
Yeah, definitely. Let's have more of Will and Kyle Fletcher. I did like Will's promo as well when he was busted open, and he just, unbelievable. And I can never not hear Essex, England enough because it's where I'm from. So the fact that Justin Roberts says that every time he comes out, again, I digress on next. We've got a lot to get to. Gary Joe, the next one, it was the other semi-final of or the semi-final, as you guys in America says, Continental Classic, Okada and Ricochet. Look, now I'm bald as Ricochet is, right? But I found that hilarious when he made the crowd quieten down. He hit the ropes, he crossed the ropes either side, and he slapped him on his head, and you could hear the slap on his bald head echo out the arena. And you made a good point there, Godo, because you mentioned that people have been getting on AEW's back for Osprey and the amount of losses, and you could then there is an argument to say Ricochet's the same. Obviously, Okada picked up the victory in this one. But what they're doing so well, Gary, in my opinion, with Ricochet is the turn of that. He's now that I don't even say snotty heel, but he's that cocky little heel that and generally what you should and generally what a cocky little heel like Ricochet should be doing is getting beat. And that's exactly what he's doing. I love the toilet roll at the end as well. That was brilliant. More of that. Hammerstein Ballroom, by the way, was fantastic for AEW. I have to say, more of that next year for AEW as well, please. But this match was great, load of fun. But what I'm going to finish, Gary, before I let you go and say, Klitschko Okada is a national treasure and should be knighted, please.
I very much agree. Like, I don't know what it is with Okada, but it's just his cheesy gimmick. So I guess you could say with Okada really really works. But yeah, just when he got him across the head, like that was hilarious. Like I titled it on "Follow the Revolution." Oh, he was nice, just smacking the bug off his head. You know, but I do agree with Ricochet. Like people cannot stand him because they say, "Well, he can't talk. He's this, he's that." Well, when you're getting him as this, selfish heel, to me, he's a heel right now, and it's really working, quite frankly. After the match, though, that was really nice storyline development from AEW. Loved it a lot. Um, but the match itself, I personally think it was the rightful winner. I mean, I think we expected Okada to win, but um, through and through, I mean, these were really good two matches to really begin the show.
Yeah, it really was, Dave. With this one, obviously, Klitschko, we haven't seen a lot of Okada. We saw a little bit of him in the C2, obviously. We don't see too much of him in ring at the minute. We know where this is going now, or where this is heading, and we'll get into that when we talk about the end of obviously the Okada Osprey match. But Dave, for you, what's next for Ricochet now? We see it with Swerve. Obviously, that's looking at potentially that's where they're going. Do you see Ricochet winning any gold this year or 2025 in TNA? TNA in AEW, sorry, apologies.
Well, I think from his demeanor after the bit with Swerve at the end with the toilet rolls, his facials were brilliant. He just stood there, absorbed it. Where one of the toilet rolls landed, like draped over him as well. I thought that was a really nice touch, even though obviously they couldn't have planned that. Yeah, I think we're going to see a more aggressive side to Ricochet. Whether that is going to be like alongside the Hurt Syndicate, and whether that's something that's dead in the water, or whether that's something they go back to, whether it's a longer story that they're telling. I'm certainly interested to see where it will go. In regards to Okada, I think we're just seeing just why he is just so revered and such a good performer. Everything he does means something. And yeah, he had to kind of take on the role as the baby face in some respects, given the developments with Ricochet. But then later on in the match against Will, we saw a different side, and he wasn't doing a lot different, but I don't know, he's just so good. So yeah, again, another great match. Think we saw a lot of great singles matches on the card, and this is right up there with them.
Yeah, definitely. So, Mongo, I just want to touch on a point that Dave mentioned. He said about Ricochet, the Hurt Syndicate. I want to throw one out there to you. Do you perhaps see Ricochet's wife joining AEW and becoming the mouthpiece for Ricochet in 2025?
I don't know if I see Samantha joining AEW. I think she's focusing on her music career. I think she joined WWE to try to get that platform and try to get the exposure. And it's one of those, some people just they're good at what they do even if they don't particularly favor it. And I think she's kind of come out and I think upset people because she said, look, I loved my job, it's just not what I wanted to do. I wanted to perform, I wanted to do more. And I think she got some unnecessary hate for that. But I think her kind of just staying off to the side because I think she doesn't want to take the attention away from Ricochet or have those kind of criticisms going towards him. But I do want to kind of touch on what they were saying about the Hurt Syndicate, because I think that slap's kind of what opened up Ricochet. I think he was already embarrassed by them, and then he got the shit slapped out of him, and then the card torn up. He was humiliated, and MVP is basically like, you need a mean streak, and I think this Swerve storyline is what's going to give that mean streak to him. I think we're going to see another side of him. And also, Okada in this match, it was fantastic. And I think people forget pay-per-view Okada is different than Dynamite Okada. And I think the criticisms of, Okada, he's, they wash, he's not the same as New Japan. You're not going to get New Japan Okada on weekly television because New Japan wasn't weekly television. Like, I've never understood that criticism, but I think Okada kind of reminded everybody who he was last night. And like you both said, with the slapping of the bald head and Nigel saying he didn't learn that from Ultimo Dragon, just his storytelling in the ring, it was fun. And it really reminded everyone of Okada being one of the best tournament wrestlers in the world for a reason and being one of the biggest signings for a reason.
Yeah, definitely. So I thought the match was great. I loved it. More on Okada shortly, but before we get there, we do get the Tijuana Street Fight for the AEW Women's World Championship. Mariah May did defeat Thunder Rosa. Mongo, going back to you, I wasn't massively surprised that Mariah May won that match. I fully expected her to do so. But I have to say, I'm going to be critical of Thunder Rosa here. I saw her a couple of weeks ago. She was over here in this country, and for me personally, stunk the place out. Riot Cabaret. I hold my hands up to that. But I will say, in her now, back goes like I will say, I'm critique, but I'm also praising. This match was brilliant. I loved it, and I thought this was one of Thunder Rosa's best outings that I've seen in a while in this. Shall I say, who's next for Mariah May, though, in your opinion?
I mean, that's tough because she's already kind of run through a lot of the roster kind of quickly. So I got to say Statlander, maybe. I think Statlander kind of getting the rub from Monet. I think maybe she's the next logistical person to try to at least go up and try to dethrone Mariah and kind of give Mariah more legitimacy because she's kind of quietly becoming one of the MVPs of the women division too, showing that she's a workhorse. I think Thunder did a good job making Mariah look dominant here. I think the pinata spot with attacks was brilliant. I loved it when it just opened up. I mean, we knew it was going to be some tack reveal somewhere, but seeing him with the pinata, the visuals were great. I agree with you, on the criticisms of Thunder. Sometimes the matches just don't always deliver, and I think she needs that right chemistry. But I think her and Deanna and her and Mariah have really shown that she can have those matches. It's just got to be the right people. But to answer your first question, I think Statlander is probably the next one that I would probably do a quick feud with Mariah just to kind of also get Mariah those chops of beating the best. That way, when Tony does dethrone her, it's again, you're still a fighting champion too. So it kind of is that role reversal.
Yeah, definitely so. Gary Joe, when we go into this, as Morgan mentioned, Mariah May has gone through this roster fairly quickly. But I have to say, she is also, I think, I don't know, I've seen more of a vicious side to her. Ever since the whole Tony Storm thing finished, she's adapted her style a little bit and become a lot they're more impactful for me, her matches in the ring now. Whereas before, not so much. It was all kind of, hey, I'm Mariah May kind of thing. And now it's like, I'm fucking Mariah May, bitch, and I'm going to kill you. That's kind of where we're going with that. Do you like the fact that she's showing that adoptive of new styles as she's progressed through this character change?
Yeah, something about Mariah May, she can just turn anything into, superb gold, in my opinion. No pun intended here. Her next opponent, I really think they need to, give her actually a legit story for me to care. I'm not saying that I don't care about Mariah May's title run. I think it's doing really well. But I want to see her in a meaningful story. And I think once this feud is over with somebody, and it's something that I could see maybe going a little bit longer, but I could see Jamie Hayter, get her back into the mix. Jamie it's good to see her back, and I want to see them both in a more than highly anticipated feud. I'm not saying that it won't deliver with Jamie Hayter and Julia Hart. Like that's a feud that I'm very excited for. But I really want to see whoever takes the title off of Mariah mean something. All of you guys know how I feel about stat. So I mean, if it's stat, please give me that. But I don't see it being stat, and I'm gonna, of course, tell my reasons why once we get to that match on the card. But as for Thunder Rosa, she never disappoints, in my opinion. Like, she's just so good. Of course, maybe she's just not the, you know, what, early 2000s, Thunder Rosa when she first came in. But people better remember, unfortunately, injuries happen, and, those put a setback on your career. Thunder Rosa has had quite a few since being in AEW, but I really enjoyed this. It's exactly what it's supposed to be, and yeah, it was a fun one.
It was. Dave, before I get to you, I've just got some bit of breaking news, sorry, from Progress Wrestling. Vikingo has been injured again. He had a match. He was against Lycos 2, who I know very well, know somewhat well because he was at my show in July. It was stopped early due to an unfortunate injury to Vikingo. He'll be checked over by Progress's medical team, and they hope for a speedy recovery. So I don't actually know the full extent at this time, but yeah, it just flashed up on my phone, so I thought would quickly mention it. Why? Where I know Vikingo was very exciting in AEW, I know he was exciting in TNA, but unfortunately, looks as though another injury has scuppered his return from injury to the ring. But Dave, obviously, we wish him very well in his recovery. But Dave, going back to Mariah May, Thunder Rosa, Dave, for you, when do we see that? Obviously, I want your thoughts on the match, of course, and secondly, when do we finally start seeing Tony? When's that first interaction proper interaction going to be between Tony and Mariah, do you think?
I think they'll keep them apart for quite a while longer, yeah. Mariah's just kind of not acknowledged the return as she is such. She's not really said a lot. I think there's plenty more for her to do in the women's division over the next few months. You've got the likes of Willow, you've got the likes of, a returning Julia Hart that although it looks like she's going to be in the program, we hate her, and I think they're facing each other next week. Totally wouldn't surprise me all in 2025 if we get more of a face version of the House of Black. I think Brody, he's hugely over, hugely popular with the crowd as it is. And Malachi and Buddy, it doesn't take much for them either to be huge crowd favorites. They've kind of been tweeners for a while now. So I think a Julia Mariah program could be something that they could definitely look at as well. And then you got some of the younger kind of talents coming through. The likes of Queen Aminata is somebody that I was really impressed by this year when we've seen her. So there's a lot more for Mariah to achieve before we get to that big match with Tony Storm. And I've got to say, I know I said it earlier, I think they will hold out all in for that huge rematch.
Yep, I think so. We'll see though. And again, Mariah May victorious. Don't it? I also don't rule out Megan Bain at any chance this year. By the way, there's always that potential. So I don't know if she signed anywhere yet, anyway, but won't rule that one out. Dave, on to the next one. So this next match was the ending of last year's World's End. Obviously, there was a reveal of the devil. It was Adam Cole. He was obviously turned on MJF, which we kind of expected somewhere along the line. It was kind of scuppered due to injury. Didn't really get going because of injuries to both men, really. In that we had this match for the Dynamite Diamond Ring. MJF successful again, a good, what I call a good nut shot, ready for the fin, and a heat seeker gets the job done. At the end of the match, though, we saw we saw kind of the Undisputed Era minus Bobby Fish reunite. Have they switched again, though, Dave? At the end of this, do you think?
Well, it's like Gary Joe said earlier, injuries happen in wrestling, and it kind of derailed the MJF Adam Cole program for a long time. So I'm glad that we got that big match on pay-per-view. And for me, we got the rightful winner in MJF. Now, didn't necessarily go the way I expected it to. I don't know if you guys thought that Taven and Bennett were going to turn on Cole, but that's why I thought they were at ringside. Maybe I read that wrong, but that's the direction I thought they were going in. So now that they haven't, and they've had that big match, and that you've got this, Undisputed Kingdom standing side by side and I think they kind of said things are going to change or words to that effect. I think that was Roddy saying that as they were walking up the ramp. So I'm interested in which direction they go. I'm glad we got the match at long last, but MJF rightful winner for me and rightful winner of the feud, and he keeps the Dynamite ring, which is just synonymous with Max, and I think it's going to be difficult for anybody to take that from him at any point, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. So, Gary Joe, with that, where do they go now? We're assuming MJF is kind of back in the mud. I know he's just finished filming. Was it Happy Gilmore 2?
Yeah.
I think by some time. Yeah, it was Happy Gilmore 2, wasn't it? Yeah. I know he's just finished with that. As I just mentioned, Dave, have we seen another reversal here in terms of Adam Cole and everyone being heels? MJF, is he going to be a face again, or how is this going to work going forward? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know, if I can be very honest. Like, I was expecting, like the fact that post match, Cole is just, hanging out with his buddies, and I really thought it was going to be Kyle and Roddy turning on him. I really did. I think maybe a lot of people did as well. But it looks like we're now getting the Undisputed Era back together, minus Bobby Fish. Um, Man, as for MJF, it really does make you wonder what's. I mean, I hope it's a really good year for MJF. I know he's returned once April, I think, of this year. I don't remember. Double or Nothing, so like May. So something just has been missing with MJF. Um, and I'm really hoping a little bit of a nice shift for him. When you're talking about the golden diamond ring, I gotta say this. One of my followers said in the comments last night, "Look, MJF is the Undertaker," and I replied back to saying, "Huh? Obviously, it makes sense now. He's 6-0, getting the diamond ring." I'm like, "Wow, okay." But yeah, and as for Adam Cole, I mean, maybe this just slowly comes to that point where it becomes a betrayal. I don't know, but I don't see MJF going back as a babyface. I don't think you should do that. I think people get more invested with the heel side of MJF. I don't know, and it's very rare that AEW sometimes makes me puzzled on something, but this one really has me puzzled. I really wish I can think of a good theory. There was one name that I was hoping for last night. Maybe he comes back and protects his buddy, and that is Wardlow. Man, he needs to come back. But yeah, that's all I really can say on it. As for the match, again, good storytelling with it. I'm glad that MJF won. I think he needed to win more than Adam Cole, quite frankly. But yeah, like I said, I'm puzzled with this. What's going to be happening? And
Yeah, it is interesting.
Gilmore too.
Yeah, sorry, Gojo. It was an interesting one, isn't it, Mongo? Where they go with this? It was, as we've already ended. It was kind of a reveal. It was great, but it was kind of disappointing because both was injured at the time. So we had that kind of the double heel, the double turn, or whatever you want to call it at that point. MJF went back to heel, Adam Cole come back as a face. It was a lot of a confusion around where we're going, and it still feels quite confusing now that match has ended because of what happened at the end of the match.
Yeah, and I think, like David said at the top of this, the injuries really derailed the storyline from last year between MJF hurting his shoulder, Adam Cole breaking his ankle. And I think they wanted to conclude the story, and it just kind of feel like it was blown off really quickly. So I think that's why MJF, kind of got his comeuppance from the Undisputed Era / Kingdom, so they could kind of go on their way, MJF kind of go on his way. It's hard because I think MJF kind of being part-time this year really kind of hurt his chances to be in meaningful stories. And I think that's kind of maybe what they should lean into next is maybe is his comeuppance tour. So maybe Wardlow comes back, but Wardlow feels for him because MJF's been shouting this whole time that Adam Cole is not the good guy in this story. and not many people are really believing MJF. So maybe Wardlow could say, yeah, he is, because he told me to come join his group, and look, he forgot about me at home. I got hurt. He didn't care about me. My friends didn't care about me. You're the one who's truly cared about me. I thought you were selfish. Maybe that's what they do to have some sort of meaningful story for MJF come back up and Wardlow kind of get his screen time back, versus not having the whole turn again. But I'm curious, why were there 2 rings last night? That really, it bugged me. There was two rings. You had Adam Cole put one on, but then you had the gold one that MJF had, which I know they have their replica rings, but there was 2 of them last night. Unless I'm totally crazy, I swear he went to the table, MJF grabbed one, but then Adam Cole had his. I just think that match, it could have been a Dynamite match personally. I don't know if it fit World's End. I think that's why it felt off. It didn't fit with. We had the Continental Classic, we had the women's matches, and then we kind of had this just kind of thrown in there, like, oh, okay.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we just call it confusing. That because that's what it's been from kind of the reveal. Just from there, it's been confusing as to what's going on. But hopefully, things will be more clear going forward, and we do get the AEW version of the Undisputed Era back on TV, as you always say, minus Bobby Fish. Whether that's a bad thing or not is up to you. If you guys can make your own minds up on that, but. From there, we go to a good old-fashioned meat slapper. I love the Konosuke Takeshita Dave. Yes, I have been working on that name. For those of you that watch this program, know that me and Japanese names are not best of friends. But thanks to Dave. But we got it right against Powerhouse Hobbs. Mongo, I thought, look, this for me was the sleeper match. I expected good things, but when you look at the card and you say this one would, you kind of rank matches. For me, this was the absolute sleeper match of the night. I thought this match was great. Not surprised. Was I surprised? I was kind of not surprised, but surprised that Hobbs didn't pick up the victory. I feel as if AEW's got big things for Hobbs this year, and perhaps maybe this will be the not saying the final defeat for Hobbs, but a big push in 2025. But Takeshita for me has been one of the outstanding performers this year for AEW.
No, I agree. I mean, I thought last year when Takeshita beat Kenny Omega 2 times that was like his, coming out party. But then this year he's just between going to Maple Leaf and wrestling Speedball and traveling all around the world, having 3 dates in Japan next month. And he's already solidified as one of the top guys in AEW, one of the top fighting champions. Hobbs comes back and he's like, I'll remind you guys of who I am. So I really enjoyed because Takeshita showed his strength in this match and Hobbs showed his power. And this, you didn't, like you said, you didn't think it was going to work, but both men just beat the living hell out of each other and showed, why this, like you said earlier in the show, this roster is so deep that there's not really a lot of bottom tier of the roster that they all can go. And I think they all try to outwork each other. And I saw a comment on Twitter last night that popped me, and it was like, everyone's wrestling like the rents do. Like that's what World's End feels like. And they really were. They were wrestling like rent was due.
Yeah, certainly was. I thought this was great. Gary Joe, I mean, for you, what point does here we go. See, there we go. What point does Takeshita drop the International Championship and perhaps focus on the AEW World's Championship?
That's a good question. It's kind of like that Mariah May thing. Like, until there's a meaningful feud for Takeshita, then there's a possibility of who that could be. I don't think it's going to be for a while. I didn't expect Hobbs to win, considering, Takeshita is going to be part of Wrestle Kingdom 19 and, of course, Wrestle Dynasty. Technically Saturday night here in the States. But, yeah, like, there's just so much star power in AEW right now for who potentially could take that title off of Takeshita. I'm hoping not for a while, because quite frankly, Takeshita has made this title very important since probably Orange Cassidy. And I love that. So as for Hobbs though, man, the dude is so good with his craft. Like, he was selling his injury. He was just smash mouth hitting, which you expect with Takeshita, but the fact, that Hobbs really made this work. I mean, what is the guy? Like 285, 6'4", 6'5", and just on the top rope, just doing a crazy suplex is just phenomenal. Like for a guy that really messed up his knee earlier in the year, you would not think so with this match. So,
No.
And I love the fact that both men got a standing out like mid match too.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I love about the AEW crowds, that they get so, mentally invested. Like you can feel the passion that the crowd has with these two men. So I'm going to say Danhausen takes the title off of Takeshita. There you go.
Danhausen. Wow. Okay. My pick was Speedball Bailey. To be honest, I thought he was going to come in and eventually take the title.
Ooh, he is. Mongo may have to correct me on this because he's really good about keeping up on his reports with me. I'm pretty sure Mike Bailey starts maybe in AEW coming up here in January.
Sure when he starts, but I know I saw him at Deadlock this past month, and he gave a speech after his match with Jake something and the tag titles that he was going to go back to Canada for a while and reflect. So right now he's sitting at home. I'm not sure if he's just finishing out his TNA contract that he has, or if maybe there's a visa issue. Because again, he's had issues before in the past where he kind of got flagged for coming into the U.S. and working without a proper visa, and the U.S. didn't allow him to work for a while. So I don't know. Again, I don't know how visas work. I don't want to speculate, but it could be something. Maybe he has to get that renewed, or maybe he's just he wrestles 100 miles an hour. Maybe he just wants to heal up for a little bit because these guys, like, they take some gnarly bumps. Like every single one we talked about tonight, they take bumps that make me hurt, and I'm watching it.
Yeah, definitely. So the other one that is probably unlikely, I think I know where he's heading, and his contract's up in February, is Josh Alexander. But I feel as if that may have already been, we may already see him in another wrestling show somewhere else. Come there, but we don't. You never know. The things could happen. I think Josh Alexander, by the way, would suit AEW a lot better. But that's from watching him for anyway. But anyway, Dave, going back to you and this one, Powerhouse Hobbs. I feel it's now about time that we see Powerhouse Hobbs as a mainstay. AEW, we've always said that we wasn't sure about if they knew how to book the big guy. Well, I think we're starting to see it now more so that they are. But 2025 for me, Dave, I feel as if Powerhouse Hobbs has to win something this coming year, shall I say?
Yeah, I just think he's improved so much over the last few years. His connection with the crowd. Gary mentioned his selling of the injury. It was so believable. It was really good. And even I'm not sure if they messed up a spot on the turnbuckle, but it just played into the injury, and it didn't look out of place. It looked like it was meant to happen. Um, yeah, I think in at times in AEW, and this card is an example of it. There was a lot of matches that perhaps ended the way you expected them to end. That's not always a bad thing, though. In terms of if it's predictable, it's how they get there. And there was definitely moments in this match where Hobbs could have won, and even though I didn't necessarily expect it, they did such a good job with a match. They could have absolutely done that. You mentioned as well that Takeshita is going to be playing a part in Wrestle Kingdom and Dynasty, so it does kind of make you, when you're predicting matches and outcomes, it does play a part into it. So I think they did the best possible job they could at bringing a little bit of doubt over the result. And yeah, in regards to Hobbs in 2025, first and foremost, I hope that he stays healthy. I hope that he stays injury free because he's a huge part of this roster in what is an absolutely stacked roster, as we've all said a few times during the podcast. Um, Hobbs could absolutely be right up there at the top of the card, and he's a big part of the future of AEW and a big star for them for years to come.
Yeah, definitely. So just before we move on, just a quick update on Vikingo. Botch sunset flip. Sounds like it's his knee again, by the sound of it. He's just come back from a knee injury. So sounds like something wasn't quite right with his knee. They threw the X up literally enough straight away. So I'm guessing a reoccurrence of a knee injury from Vikingo, but we'll probably hear more than that soon. But again, like we said, everyone, we hope obviously it's not serious and that we comes back and is on our TV screens very, very soon. Next, it's time for Adam to eat some humble pie again when it comes to a certain Mercedes Monet. Now, for those of you that don't know, I have never been a fan of Sasha Banks, Mercedes Moné at all. I have shit on her nearly every week. She has come and danced her way into the AEW locker room onto our screens. I shit on her at All In over here in the UK. Thought her match was absolutely horrific. But it seemingly, if you put her in the ring with Chris Statlander, everything seems to work. It was the longest match, I believe, in AEW women's history. I think that's come out as just shy of 25 minutes long. Gary Joe, I'm going to start with you, obviously, because it's Statlander as well. But look, Mercedes is improving in the world. I haven't got any humble pie or cake to eat at the moment, but look, credit where it's due. I mean, look, when it comes to a chemistry perspective, those two have got it in abundance. When you put them two together, magic does happen.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. Like I really wasn't I was very impressed with the Full Gear match. I feel this one was not as good, but I think again the storyline really told like the match itself. Um, I'm just gonna say this right now, damn it. Yeah, I wanted it to happen last night, but I think what they're doing is they're gonna do Chris and Mercedes three, and then I think that's where Stat wins. I got that feeling. That's why I think Stat lost. That's why she seemed perplexed and emotionally upset last night. Obviously, I follow AEW unconditionally, and when you see her backstage little interview with, I think it was like Lexi last night, that she said that she's gonna be coming back, like she wants to not be better, she wants to be great. So I just hope they don't blow off this feud because that would really hurt my nerves a little bit, if I can be honest. I really was expecting somebody to come out last night too, and that was Camille. But that did not happen. So, but I got to give credit where it's due with Mercedes. I'm with you. Like I'm not the biggest fan of her. I've never been a big fan. But like I always say, my criticism aside, with Mercedes, she's really helping this women's division a lot. So I applaud her for that. I just wanted a different outcome last night, but that time will come, I suppose. And yeah, and Mercedes never show up in a monster truck or whatever that was. That was hideous.
That was pretty mad. It will eventually happen. Dave, look, obviously, again, someone that we've spoken about Mercedes as Sasha as well in the past. For you, who does topple Mercedes? Do you agree with Gary Joe? I thought it was going to be Anna Jay recently. I thought that time was there. I know Anna Jay's recently going back to Japan. I think going back to Japan for another show or two or whatever she's doing over there. But Dave, obviously, great to see Mercedes back to being the Mercedes that everyone loved as well, and everyone does love. But also for you, who does take that title off of Mercedes eventually?
Yeah, again, I've had to defend Mercedes a few times over the past
Me
year
mostly.
against you, because I'm a big fan of hers, and I think, as you quite rightly say, when she's in there with the right opponent, with Chris Statlander being the one, the last two pay-per-views on the bounce, they've kind of stole the show. They've been really up there. There wasn't anything bad, I didn't think, at World's End. Everything was pretty good. There was a really high standard, but again, this rematch was sensational, and they could very well have evened it up and got Chris Statlander her win, and they've decided to go in a different direction and not do that. But I do agree with Gary. I think Chris will be the person that topples Mercedes down the line. I loved the suplexes, the three amigos. I think it was the seven amigos, and I really enjoyed as well the actual pin combination because to protect two wrestlers, and they do that, don't they, with schoolboys or roll ups from time to time. But I think the sequence that they used to finish the match was really impressive, and I really enjoyed it. Like Mercedes out wrestled Chris in the final moments. It could have gone either way, and Mercedes just had that bit more nous, a bit more experience in those big matches to kind of get across the line. So yeah, I think it will be Chris. But I don't think it was a wrong decision having Mercedes win at World's End.
Interesting. So, Mongo, for you, look, the women's division. AEW is listen, there's a lot of women's divisions I hold high in high regard. I hold the NWA women's division in high regard. I hold the WWE women's division in high regard. I hold TNA's women's division in high regard. At what point, and this is a bit of an off subject, obviously I want to get your thoughts on the match as well. And I know AEW have just got a new TV deal and stuff like that, but at what point does it come in women's wrestling where they have to have their own show?
I mean, to quote the world famous John Cena, I think the time is now. Um, I think Shockwave, I've talked to Gary about this. I think Shockwave should be a women's show. I think if you want to change the world, if you want to do something different, why not have an hour programming? You know, since they sunsetted Rampage, why not have an hour focused on the women's division? You have a TBS title, which is your television title. You have a world title, so you have two titles they can go for. You can set up number one contenders, like kind of like Battle of the Belts do. And I agree. I think, you know, my wife's very happy. This is one of the best couple of years of women's wrestling, from NXT to TNA to AEW. They're finally getting their flowers, being taken more seriously, and, you know, showing what they can do. Kenzie Page over in NWA is absolutely killing it right now and is going to be a superstar somewhere. So I think if you don't want to see the women's division thrive, you probably just want to go back to the 90s and, you know, watch Jerry the King Lawler's favorite kind of matches. But I think we finally moved past that. And I definitely think 2025, I think, is the year. You know, maybe do like another Evolution type paper, even a pay-per-view, even if it's like a max special. I think they could do that. I know NWA tried with Empower, it didn't work as well, but I think there's a niche for it. And I know you're not the biggest Mercedes guy, but I think she's kind of helped open the eyes of maybe some of the naysayers that the women's can go. And I think that's where this is going to go. So I know Gary, just to kind of out, texted me about midnight last night saying Stat shoulder was up, and he was super angry about it. So I think that leads into an Iron Woman match. I think AEW gets their very first Iron Woman's match at Revolution, Mercedes versus Statlander, and I think that's where Statlander dethrones her.
When do I invent from you there, Mongo?
Interesting. And I was going to say that you'd never get another plug off me. I lied. If you want to see my interview with Kenzie Page, go into the special interview section. You'll get to see that, and her sister Kylie Page, two women who, by the way, and Tiffany Nieves, for those of you that don't know of NWA Women's Division, those three will be. Gabe, go on.
I just wanted to say, we reflected on the women's divisions across all the promotions. And I think there was definitely a time that we all knew that when there was a women's match on the card, it was kind of not really taken too seriously. It was a bit of a token gesture. Now we're getting pay-per-views with a minimum of two women's matches, and that they do not feel out of place at all. In fact, we could have 3, 4 women's matches at times, and it wouldn't feel forced or, just like they're trying to do it because they feel they should. They feel equally as important as the men's matches, and that's all we've wanted for a long time. So yeah, I think props to all the promotions that have kind of achieved that, but more so this year in 2024, it just feels normal. It doesn't feel forced at all.
Yeah, I agree with that. Oh, by the way, my tip to dethrone Mercedes is going to be Athena. She's going to finally come up at one point from Ring of Honor when she finishes her Roman Reigns-esque reign, or Camille reign, shall we say? Because Camille was doing it before Roman Reigns was doing it in an NWA. By the way, for those of you that don't know, she was 700 days. I know didn't quite make it to the time frame that Roman did, but she had more defenses. There you go. That's real. That's a true story on that one. Anyway, Klitschko Okada. I mean, look, we wax lyrical about these two guys at the start. Klitschko Okada, Will Ospreay, Continental Classic final. When you think a match can't, or when you think you've just witnessed two of the greatest wrestling matches of all time, they just put this match in just for shits and giggles at near the end of the show. Mongo, this was unbelievable. Once again, defining what AEW is all about with these two guys in the ring. Okada picks up the victory in an amazing finishing sequence to a match. Wasn't the end because, of course, at the end, Christopher Daniels comes out and said he's no longer an EVP, and to present you with what the Continental Crown would be the EVP, and that was the return that we was all expecting. Of the cleaner Kenny Omega. Great to see him. I know he's in action in a couple of days over in Japan against another good buddy of ours, Dave, Gabe Kidd, which should be fun. But when you think they couldn't top it, they throw this in.
I didn't think they were going to be able to top Osprey Fletcher. I didn't think they went out there and they're like, watch me. And you talk about that sequence, the sequence where he hits the Rainmaker and then it gets countered, and then Will hits his own Rainmaker, and then the drop kick counters into the Styles clash. Everything just, they know each other so well, and he little brothered him, and he's always had his number. Okada's always had Osprey's number, and he kind of showed it. But I just want to say, for those who say the Osprey doesn't sell crowd, they're totally in shambles, because there was such good selling of his first match in this match. I really enjoyed he was exhausted. He tried to have the fighting spirit, but he couldn't muster it. And Okada he was Okada. And again, he changed his style for this match. He went in there trying to ground the aerial assassin, and he did. And then Kenny coming out, that stare down, that perfectly placed all in poster right behind them, planting the seeds that all in Texas, you're getting Okada versus the Cleaner. Sign me up, because they did what we all kind of wanted them to do. Is he's been saying on his shoot interviews with Gabe Kidd, when he's done in Japan, he's coming after Okada. He's been out, he's been training. He wasn't the best bout machine, for the past few months, but now he's back and he's going to be. And I think Okada now has something to prove to Kenny, and now Kenny is the one that doesn't have anything to prove. So it's going to be role reversal of when he got attacked and got sent out to the hospital. So I'm here for it, and this is why I like AEW, because maybe the stories aren't so much in your face, but they plant those seeds, and if you pick up on them, you get rewarded for your patience.
Yeah, I think the whole point of it is to actually listen and do some research on storylines, because a lot of it is the story is there if you actually pay attention and watch the program, rather than just have an opinion on it. If you actually watch Dynamite Weekly, you don't even have to watch Dynamite Weekly. This could be a story that goes back to New Japan and days like that. So if you're a follower of wrestling, you'll know the story. Gary, Joe, on this, it was great to see Kenny back. I got to, obviously diverticulitis is a very severe injury. We know he's not the only wrestler that's got it. We know Brock Lesnar had it as well. Um, and again, setting up the seed for All In. At what point, though, do we see the Cleaner back in AEW? Will he have a couple of tune-up matches before that match with Okada, do you think?
Mongo said it best. Kenny knows this roster is so deep and so stellar, and he wants to be on the level of those guys. But like he said recently, I'm not going to be on the same level, but I want to be a part of that again. Oh my gosh, I think he's certainly going to get some preliminary matches in there, is what I'm going to call them. Nothing against Gabe Kidd. I think Gabe Kidd is phenomenal at what he does. I'm very excited for that match, by the way, to see how Kenny will perform leading up to this match with Okada. I do like the, planting the seeds is what we're calling it for, Kenny and Okada at All In. I got my ticket for it, so I'm hoping that is the match that I will see get locked in, because I think that would be a dream match for anybody to see in person. I'm trying to think who his perhaps preliminary matches could be leading up to that. Yeah, I don't know, but all I know is with the match. So I want to touch on that. Osprey, again, Mongo said it right on the button. People like to complain and bitch and moan and whatever they want to do about Will Ospreay's ability, saying that, he can do anything right when it comes to selling, which, again, he did so damn good on that. This match did not disappoint me. I'm glad that it was the final. Gosh, and Dave said it earlier too, you never know what you're going to expect with Okada. Are you going to get the little, baby face Okada, and then you got the heelish Okada on top of that? But when we saw the stare down with Kenny and Okada, that's exactly what I want to see. I don't want, a return coming in and next thing just beating the crap out of that person. The fact that it was just a teased stare down is what I love the most. Now, I could ask you, gentlemen, and the same thing that makes me wonder, it's like what we were discussing with MJF. What's next for Will Ospreay? Does that continue with Kyle Fletcher? or do you want to see something else for Will Ospreay?
I think they'll do another one with Fletcher. I do eventually, and I'm going to get my bit to go to Dave at this as well. I see Osprey and Omega all in next year in back in when it's back in Wembley, not next year, sorry, the year after when it's back in Wembley, and I see that being for the championship at some point, whether it's a final of a tournament or whether Kenny is a champion or whether Osprey's a champion, I don't know. I do see that hitting the All In 2026, one of the matches that we'll get next year. Dave, on this Omega back Okada, the Continental Classic winner, and obviously, where do you lie on the Kenny Omega situation? What is next for Osprey at the end of this as well?
Yeah, a lot going on, a lot to unpack. I, I love the use of Omega here because we knew as wrestling fans that he was going to be competing against Gabe Kidd, but I think AEW is his home, and they had to incorporate him into the show somehow. And the way they did that, presenting the title to Okada, was the absolute best way of doing it, given their history. As you guys have said, we this story goes back a long time, and I don't want to criticize AEW because I think they tell great stories, as we've said, but I think new fans could if they should use some vignettes and some bits and pieces to bring new fans up to speed with that history because it's so comprehensive. There's a lot there, that can play into the lead up to that huge match in Texas in the summer. In regards to Okada winning this tournament, again, not really a criticism, just a kind of an observation of mine. Okada's gone through quite a lot there to retain the championship that was already his. Hypothetically, he could defend that title on Dynamite and lose it. So my my preference here would be to actually retire that title and for Okada to say, if you want to be the Continental Champion, you have to do what I've done. Next year you've got to beat me in this tournament. If you're going to hold this title. AEW at times gets criticized for the amount of belts it has. And again, not really a criticism, just a preference. I would like to see them go in that direction. For Okada to say, I'm the most successful tournament wrestler, right up there with Chono in terms of successful tournament wrestlers. That's what I'd like them to do. I don't know how they quite do that and address it because obviously the books aren't part of the show at the minute, but I don't know what you guys think about that. Mongo, is that something that you'd like to see?
I do, yeah. I kind of like the G1 trophy. I kind of wish we
Yeah.
had the trophy versus the belt. I get why they did the belt. I agree. I think they should retire the belt and just do the trophy. Do it like the NHL does. Maybe have like their names etched in on it. Have the big beautiful trophy and kind of add the prestige because now you have two winners, but now Okada is your second winner. So whoever wins in 2025 is going to get that huge rub that they won one of the biggest tournaments in wrestling, but that's not the G1. Like they're establishing that the Continental Classic is on par with that kind of wrestling. And I think having a trophy or having something to signify that is better than, like you said, a belt that they can randomly lose on a Dynamite.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely so. Well, we'll find out what goes on with that. But Okada is now with Eddie Kingston as two winners of the Continental Classic. Main event time. Fine. Eventually, we get to the main event. And what was an amazing show. Moxley did retain the AEW World Heavyweight Championship, which you haven't really seen properly since he won it against Cassidy Page and Jay White. Good to see Maria Shafir on the end of a switchblade as well at the end of that. Lots going on at the end of this as well, Dave. We had obviously the FTR, or sorry, should we say FT rated R. Adam Copeland, I keep calling him Edge, sorry, but I'm just so used to him being Edge. Obviously one of the biggest Edge fans here being me. Adam Copeland coming back to set up the match and Dynamite this coming week. And Dave, just to touch on that, your thoughts on that, and obviously this is a question for all three of you that you can all answer. With AEW going off, obviously the big streaming deal that started, everything that started this week, have they done enough at the end of the pay-per-view to convince maybe not say a casual fan, but a fan that perhaps want to get back into wrestling? Would the ending of that pay-per-view have done enough for that fan to have gone on to watch Dynamite this coming week? That Dave, over to you first.
I believe so. Yeah, I think they did absolutely the best job they could to not only give you the rightful outcome in the match for Moxley to retain, because I think it would have been a huge surprise for any of the other guys to pick up granted, it was a fatal four-way. There was ways of doing it, but I think the Death Rider story, is just getting started, to be honest. And I don't think any of us expected Mox to lose the title, but to still send the live crowd home happy, and you get Copeland back, who's a huge kind of name in wrestling, and recognizable from casual fans to hardcore fans. To get him there alongside his real life good friends in FTR, going into a match next week that is in FTR's hometown, I believe. Yeah, I think it was as perfect as it could get, to be honest.
Yeah, Gary, Joe, for you, look, we've come to obviously Adam Copeland's return. It was kind of, he's been cleared for a while. I think he had to finish up some movie commitments or whatever he was doing before he comes back, which is great to see him back. I always, as I said, I love singing along to his song. I love the fact that he's back in wrestling. I still like the fact he's still a crazy bastard and jumps off cages and does everything that he does. But when it comes to A, as I say, I'm going to ask you the same question: did it do enough? And B, who is the one that's going to take Moxley, the title off of Moxley in the end?
That's why I love you, Adam. You bring in some good questions. To answer the first one here, who's going to take the title off of Jon Moxley? I think, me personally, it's getting built towards it more and more that we see it, and that's going to be Darby Allin. I really think it's going to be Allen, Texas. He's going to get his moment in the sun. Like, he really deserves it. More than anybody on this roster. Darby looks like they damaged his neck for Darby to take on his next journey to Mount Everest, for what it looks like. And then he's just going to come back better than ever. And Sting obviously, kind of teased that too, with the All In, I guess, press conference that they had. So that is who I really, really think and believe that it should be. Now, let's say Adam Copeland, he kind of teased that he's going for the world title. Personally, I think I should just go for the trios titles. Those titles have to mean something. Like, it's kind of irking my nerves that it's not meaning nothing right now. So maybe put him into that instead of the world title scene. But hypothetically speaking, let's say this does lead to Jon Moxley and Adam Copeland. Adam Copeland wins, but then you see Christian, cashing in. So that is something that I certainly could see. On top of that, so it's going to be one hell of a ride when it comes to this world title run for Jon Moxley going forward. If I can be honest, when it comes to that second question, this match was a little lackluster for me. It felt like it was just too short. It did not impress me, and that sucks because the names involved, especially when we see Jay White's name on there, his first chance of getting a world title. I mean, I didn't expect him to win, but I wanted a better showing. Yeah, sure, the Switchblade with Marina Shafir was honestly one of my favorite highlights of the match. But yeah, I mean, I'm convinced that we can certainly see people tune in for this whole new era for AEW with broadcasting on Max and watching on cable, whatever you plan on watching it. So, but I do agree with Dave as well. Like, AEW, they're doing everything they can to, convince people like, hey, we are seriously what you hope for. We are that alternative that you wanted to be in. Last thing I want to touch up on when it comes to this whole streaming thing, I am very hopeful this is the end of the stupid ratings debate with fans. Oh my gosh. I know, Mongo. I know. Like, Mongo and I get so much from people just being strange on the internet. I'm just going to say that. Like, people take it so seriously. I mean, there's people on the internet saying, well, WWE show did a lot better than WWE show their house show did a lot better than World's End, and they were in the same town. Yeah, and guess what? The wrestlers are trying to present you some really good wrestling, and we're going to focus on that. It's just, that's why I'm very excited for this new era. when it comes to streaming, because like I was telling Mongo, my day off is on Wednesday, and that's where everything is going to be launched on Max with AEW. So I'm going to be binge watching some good flashbacks when it goes, leaning towards Dynamite that night. But yeah, like I said, those are my theories. Those are my thoughts. So
Yeah, definitely. Look, we're all looking forward to this week. But Mongo, just to finish up with the last bit, obviously the same question to you about did AEW do enough? And secondly, Gary Joe stole my thunder on this. I'm now going to ask you, when does Christian Cage cash in the shot? That was exactly what I was waiting to ask you. Gary Joe mentioned it though in the process. But obviously, did AEW do enough to convince a viewer that perhaps either used to watch AEW and maybe doesn't watch it anymore, or a viewer that wants it because it is a different variety of wrestling. We've got to remember every company produces a different variety of wrestling, which is either to your taste or is not to your taste. And if you don't like it, don't watch it, don't shit on it. That's always what I say. But have they done that? And B, when does Christian cash in that opportunity? And is he successful?
So I think he is successful when he cashes in, because I feel like you can't hold, I almost said money in the bank contract, but you can't hold this contract for this long and then have a failed cash in, because then it diminishes that whole story with him. But I think, again, we talked about seeds being planted. When Copeland came out, who was the first camera shot they panned over to? Christian Cage being shook that Cope was back. So is it going to be one of those where the opportunist finally he gets cashed in as this Copeland dethrone Moxley and everything's the Revolution, everything goes well, and then Christian Cage takes that title from him and just steals it and just deflates all the momentum. And that's kind of what I see happening, is Copeland taking it and then Christian stealing it and then Darby beating Christian Cage. So I kind of feel like that's the lineage they're going to add to, because then you're going to have people like Bryan Danielson, Adam Copeland, Christian Cage, Samoa Joe. You're going to have this great lineage. So it means something when Darby gets it, because I agree with Gary Joe. They're setting up Darby. Him using the Scorpion Death Drop to set up the coffin drop is such chef's kiss. The theatrics, him kind of embodying that Sting against NWO mentality, where Sting didn't care if there were 7 people in the ring. He came out with his bat ready to go. He didn't care if the entire NWO roster was in the ring. And that's what I feel like Darby is embodying, that spirit. I thought it was going to be Jay White at first, given his history with Christian, but I don't know. I think if you want to make those trios titles serious, and maybe you retire those and let them focus, because I want the Guns to get the tag titles. I want Juice to go after the international. I want them to kind of be a dominant faction, the Bang Bang Gang, not just, oh, Jay White's the only one who should have a singles run. So there's a lot they can really change. And I think, to answer your question about the Max there, I think they've planted the seeds enough that you're going to tune in just for curiosity. Like, is Beth Phoenix going to come out and and stabilize Shafir? Because they have a woman. They need someone else who's going to go against them. What better way for Shafir to have a match against someone like Beth Phoenix, or whatever name she chooses to go by, and Beth Copeland, I guess, in AEW, or get that hometown in Asheville, which I was telling Gary, I wish I could go, because it's about 4 hours away from me. I can't really do that on New Year's Day, drive 8 hours round trip to go to the show. But knowing that they're pretty much all in their hometown and it's the first one of Max, they're going to pull out a lot of stops. And I think people will be just curious enough to tune in.
Yeah, I reckon so as well. I'm just going to go through this quick, what they've announced on Dynamite. Jeff Jarrett's career announcement. We've got Jamie Hayter, Julia Hart on Collision, Briscoe and Garcia. I believe that's for the championship, is it? Yep, TNT Championship it is. We're going to have the tag team titles as well on the line, as Leo Rush, Action Andretti take on Private Party. And the next match in the rookie of Tony Storm will be against the experience of Diona Perazzo. So it'll be interesting to see if the rookie picks up another victory. But as we go to leave us now, Mongo, what have you got coming up, and where can people interact with you on your socials?
Yeah, thank you. They can follow me and my wife at Cruising with Kayfabe on all of our socials, or at CWK Podcast on X, aka Twitter. We actually have an episode coming up all about Will Ospreay that we're filming right now. It's kind of like we like to do little retrospectives. And then our year-end awards episode will be in a couple weeks after that. And with the Jericho Cruise coming up at the end of January, there'll be a new vlog coming up for that, because 5-time cruiser here. So I go on the cruise, film the matches. That's where I got to see Speedball versus Michael Oku. Michael Oku's back on board, so I'm super stoked to see him again. So you can check out on YouTube as well because I'll be putting content. But that's about me for plugging myself and kind of what we have coming. But yeah, cruise content and Will Ospreay and our award show. So full month of January coming up.
Definitely. So, Gary, what is going on the FTR page?
Yeah, just like Mongo, it's going to be pretty productive when it comes to January. I'm actually very excited for 2025 as a content creator. I will be going on my 5-year anniversary, which is incredible. Never thought that would happen. And, the amount of hard work going into this, it's going to make it special. And that's actually going to be starting this coming Sunday. I will be doing my Elite Year End Awards with Vixen Omega and Elise, or what I like to call War Mama Elise, which is the two that's part of the panel for the Elite, not the Elite Squared Circle, the Women's Squared Circle. So that's pretty much going on. Finally got this interview locked in. Mongo knows who it is. I spoke to her, let's see. Oh my gosh. Like I emailed her right away. But yeah, she finally got back to me. Looks like that's going to be happening in January as well. And one of the series, well, 2 series, I'm actually very happy to bring to Follow the Revolution. I'm going to be giving my love back to the indie scene. So I'm going to be plugging a lot of, content when it comes to indie promotions. I did one yesterday. It is called The Dynasty up in Albany, New York. My friend Billy and Wolf does some really good stuff there. And more to come. And, without being a content creator, I will never have opportunities to interact with some good dudes today. This was honestly a panel that it felt like a dream team because I did not expect Sir Dave Robinson today. So this was a really, really good treat.
Yeah, it was indeed. If you're listening, speaking of independent wrestling, of course, we have an independent championship somewhere along the line. If you want to plug that, you can. Okay, guys, can you give you a chance to breathe? I'm going to have to sharp inhale of breath. What have we got coming up? Here we go. In just actually in a couple of hours time, I'll be sitting down with Shelly Martinez. You may know her as Ariel. You may know her I can't remember her name in TNA. It's she was part of LAX. Anyway, in TNA. This week we've got it's funny enough you said end of year review. We've actually got an end of year review with Ignite, the independent promotion that we work with over here in the UK. I'm sitting down with Chris tomorrow, so that will come out at some point. As will our new series Independent Showcase. We just done one with Will Caven this week that was out. We're sitting down with UK independent company Riot Cabaret this week as well. So wrestling with a difference, I'm going to call that one. And tomorrow we're also sitting down with, the man, I think it was the best wrestler alive or something along those lines, Austin Aries, on a bit later on Monday. Again, that'll be out in a few weeks. We're sitting down with NWA star Black G's as well this week, so that's another one. Yeah, just not long return to NWA. He aligned himself with Big Strong Mims, who we've had on before. We're ending the week with another independent showcase, that being Ruthless Rob Drake, as well as going back to the extreme with C.W. Anderson, who's now in MLW, I believe, as well. So ex-ECW and MLW star. We start January with another 2 independent showcases, one being North Wrestling, who are doing some incredible things over here on the UK scene. You get to see the likes of TNA star Leon Slater, as well as UK independent stand-up man like Jerice on those shows. Another independent showcase with a good friend of ours called Tig, who's on the UK scene over here, has been touted as one to watch in 2025. And I can round off with the last little bit, apart from obviously the review shows that will be back as normal, with NWA star and star of the Wrestlers, Hollywood Haley J, will be coming on at the start of January as well. And that's really what I can announce for now, anyway. I want to thank, obviously, Mongo. I want to thank Gary Joe. But as it's AEW and as Christmas miracles happen, Dave, with you, you serenade us off the air, and as he's actually returned yesterday as well, if you can remember the words, of course, please serenade us off as normal.
Oh, guys, it's been a while since I did this, so I'm bound to screw it up. I just wanted to say Austin Aries referred to himself the greatest man that ever lived.
That's
I
it.
believe that was it. And you three guys are some of the greatest pro wrestling content creators that ever lived. You all work so hard at this, and I'm just thrilled to be a part of this today, and hope to do a bit more with you in the future, Ad.
One other thing before you close here, we will be celebrating our 1000th episode in 2025, so remember that as well. But Dave.
Well, that being said, it's time to bid you all adieu, goodbye, mwah, and good night. Bang.
Stay safe, everybody.